Welcome to Black Man Lab Results. We are live on Wednesday, March 30th. We have a great conversation tonight with one of my brothers who is consistent with the Black Man Lab, and we are consistent with working with him and his organization. I'm going to bring him on right away so we can talk about this past week and talk about him as well, which is what Lab Results is all about. And then on the back end, I'll give some information about the Black Man Lab. But we have him for a limited time tonight, so I wanted to be able to have as much conversation with him as possible. My brother Gary Davis is with us this evening. Gary, how you doing?
I'm good, man. How you doing?
Man, couldn't be any better, man.
I'm great. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, brother. I can hear you. Um, so,
Okay. Okay.
real quick, Gary, what we do here every week is we just talk about our guests that we have on with us and what got them to where they are today and doing the work that they're doing. And then we'll talk about what we talked about on Monday, which was conflict resolution. So, first and foremost, let us know where you were born and kind of your background that got you to where you are today, brother.
Man, I was born in the great state of Alabama. Uh,
Bama.
Alabama. So went to Troy University. It's now Troy University. It was Troy State University at the time. Moved to Atlanta in 1996 as an educator. So I was a early childhood education major. So believe it or not, man, I taught kindergarten. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. I taught kindergarten for about 6 years. And then after that, I went to mortuary school. Then I became a licensed funeral director and embalmer.
Okay,
And
wait. Stop. How did you have that transition from a kindergarten teacher to go into mortuary school? What made that happen? What how did that
well,
occur?
it had nothing to do, one had nothing to do with the other. It's just that in college, man, my part-time job was working for a funeral home, removing
Okay,
bodies.
okay.
And I felt like that was my passion. So just wiping kids' nose all day, every day, man, 5 or 6 year olds, and thinking wheels on the bus go round and round. I figured, let me go back to what I wanted to do, man. So I went to mortuary school, did that for a couple of years. Then I decided to go work for the state, and and I was in some special investigations. Did a little short time at DFACS, but then I went to special investigations where I was a forensic interviewer. I interviewed kids who witnessed a homicide, high
Mm,
profile child abuse cases. So I
mm.
did that up until 2009, man. And that's when I started Next Level Boys Academy.
Man, that's an amazing journey, bro. I didn't know all of that. That's pretty cool and interesting. But okay, I understand the mortuary thing. If you had been in that world before, okay, that makes
Right,
sense.
right,
That makes
right.
sense. That's interesting, brother. So talk about next level. What talk about? So how did you? What made you start it, and what was the impetus for it all?
Yeah, so in around 2009, I was coaching Little League sports, and I just had a passion for coaching sports. I was coaching my sons, but I knew that that hour and a half that we were putting into the Parks and Recs wasn't enough. So, man, in 2009, I was making good money, working for the good old government, had a good old government job,
Good
making
government.
six figures, man. So, the year that former President Barack Obama, his first term, the day that he was sworn in was the day I quit my job. Um, so when I quit
Wow.
my job, I honestly didn't know what I wanted to do, Marty. So I quit my job, had no plans, and I just stepped out on faith. So probably about 3 months of just sitting around brainstorming, I just kept asking God, what is it that you want me to do? And I want to do something that I enjoy doing. I enjoy working with young people, and so I started the Next Level Boys Academy in 2009, and it was just a simple summer camp program with those 10 young men who was on my baseball team. And we started out with them, and I did a summer camp program for 10 weeks for that group. And each year I implemented a program. The following year it was an after school. Then I did a rites of passage. Then I did a boot camp, and then we had a sports program. And so I'll tell you how we landed to the diversion program. So that's fairly new.
Right, which is what I'm very familiar with, and that's again, an incredible journey, brother, and that's something when you step out on faith like that, right? It's you have no clue what necessarily you're gonna do. You might have some ideas in your head, um, but then the good Lord orders our steps. Most of the time, and if we allow that, then you get to where you're supposed to be, and it's clear to me anyway. It's clear that you're where you're supposed to be in knowing the work that you're doing. So, talk a little bit about the diversion program.
Yeah, so I try to be with Next Level Boys Academy. I try to stay innovative. So my goal is to start something new every year. I didn't want to get into a place of complacency. So in 2015, I was sitting at home. I just had a newborn, and I was with the baby during the day, and then I was running the after school in the evening. And man, I just felt like I was drowning because I was complacent. Like the organization wasn't moving. I was thinking about quitting, going back into the workforce. And so I was just watching the news one day. And of course, at that time, every time you turn on the news, we see black and brown boys dying or going to jail.
Sure.
I said, you know what? I'm wondering, what are the courts doing with those first offenders? I'm sure there are a great number of young men out there who committed a crime for the first time and are going to prison. It just sparked my curiosity. So I reached out to a couple of brothers, Gabe Banks, who I was working with Letters McMahon. At that time, he was at the DA's office, Fulton County. I said, "Hey, man, I want to send something to you all. I want to propose something to you all to work with your first offenders, because at that time I was guessing that they didn't have anything." So he said they didn't have anything. So he looked at it. At that time, he got the information to Bonnie Willis, who's the Fulton County DA now, was the individual that put the program in place in Fulton County. She tried us with it, and so man, I tried it. The first young man was facing 20 years in prison. We flipped that to 20 football offers, and the rest is history, man. So right now we're diverting about 100 years of prison time a week. Last year we did over 200,000 years of prison time. Now you would think that those numbers are just really, really big. These young men that are committing these crimes in Atlanta and all the metro area, man, they are getting hundreds of years thrown at them. We have young men facing 315 years, 160 years, and so we work with them all, man. And it's a challenge because you got a group of young men who quit school, they're dropouts. We work with 4 or 5 different gangs that are in the group, but it's interesting, man. So sometimes I wonder how I do it.
It can't have any boring moments. That's for sure.
Hey, no, sir.
That's
No,
for
sir.
sure. And within the diversion programs, so like, let me just, so I'm a kid, I've committed a felony of some sort, and the court system says, okay, we're going to allow you to go to Next Level Boys Academy to try to get your stuff straight. What's that look like from when that person comes to you?
Yeah, so most of the time, these young men are incarcerated, and the defense attorney reaches out to me. I go to the jail and interview them. Now, everyone is not accepted. I do this thing that's called an integrated summary. And in the integrated summary, this is what a lot of people don't see. They just see the excitement in the classroom on Saturdays that Maui always talking about. Well, in this integrated summary is when I begin to bond and connect. They know so much about me, and I know so much about them. That's my interviewing process, that we get to know each other. I'll turn over some cards that I've never shared to anyone. They'll turn over some cards. So we've bonded before we go to court. So once I accept you into the program at the Fulton County Jail, then I go to court with you and I advocate for you, and I ask the judge to grant you a bond with your conditions that you come to Next Level Boys Academy, and we just provide that extra level of accountability. But the bonding, the respect, the trust, that's built inside of the jail. So that's why these young men rock with me the way they do.
There you go. That makes a ton of sense because I know a ton of young men that do rock with you through the program. And that would make sense to me. That it wasn't just okay. Well, we're in the program. Well, if you're bonding with them like that in the jail, that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah,
So
so you're not just, it's not an organization that's set up where you just come. All right. So you just come and because the court says no, everyone is interviewed. Now, here's the kicker, the whole family has to come. So before I accept a young man into the program, and there's another thing that people don't know is that their family members have to attend 2 or 3 classes before I accept him.
oh wow.
So when you come in there on Saturdays, you see the mom, the dad, the grandmothers, the school teachers, the
Mm-hmm.
coaches. So it's a holistic approach, man, and the entire family is in the group.
Wow, I did not know that, man. And what happens when the family connection isn't there? Like, is does that occur where there's maybe not a
Yeah, that
parent
happens.
that's
It's part, yeah. So every so you got to think we get that good group that got caught in a bad situation. Those boys
gotcha,
that's with it, that's with the wit, that's with the shit, they don't typically make it to me.
gotcha.
Yeah, so these are these young men that straddle the fence, come from good
Mm-hmm.
backgrounds, want to be out there, think they're about that life. We get that
Sure.
population. He was in the car with the homie, didn't know the homie had a gun. Everybody get the armed robbery charge. Well, we get the one
Right.
who didn't have the gun.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Okay, we're saving that young man. But if you out there robbing folk, I mean, if you put a gun on somebody in the state of Georgia, you're going to prison, man. There's nothing we could do about that.
Yeah. Got it. Got it. Got it. Wow. That's deep and interesting, but at the same time much needed because to your point, as you're saying that, I'm thinking about myself and Maui, particularly where we grew up at in Chicago. We ran with those guys a lot. We ran with the guys that most of them aren't here anymore. And a lot of times when the dirt was going down, because we were basketball players and they knew that we came from okay families, they'd say, okay, y'all going about your way, we're about to do whatever we're about to do. But there's quite often that doesn't happen, that you do wind up staying in the car,
You,
and
you know what's amazing, man, is that
mhm.
so we probably have between 80 to 100 young men that come to the organization a year. What's amazing is the number of young men that's never had a conversation with an adult male.
Wow.
And you're talking about young men that's never, a lot of these young men have never met their fathers. Moms are doing well,
Hmm.
doing all they know to do. So when they come with us, we're doing life skills, social skills, conflict resolution, anger management, job readiness. And two of the things that we do, and this is my motto, there's two things that keep Black boys alive and free. That's occupation and education. So when you get into the
Mm.
program, the first thing we're going to do is find you a job, and we're going to try to get you in trade school. And the partners that we have with the E-Trades and the Morgan Stanleys and the Home Depot, they fund them, they send them, they pay for them to go to trade school.
Mm. That's again more information I didn't know. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. Um, so you said, and then we'll get into the conversation on Monday. But you said that so everybody that comes into the Next Level Boys Academy is basically invited to come in, right? There's nobody that's just showing up.
Yeah, there are young men that show up,
Uh,
and we have an open door policy. But the young men that are court ordered to come, all those young men
gotcha.
are interviewed by me. But
Okay.
anyone can show up on a Saturday. But I love it when that happens like that because I'm able to engage with the young man that I know. That's how I talk to
Mm-hmm.
the young man that I don't know. And they all got the same
Gotcha.
issues, man. I just think when you boil down to it and you peel back the layers, man, when I look at the common denominator with the struggles of African American males, I think the main thing is the lack of knowing. They don't know
Mm-hmm.
the basic things. And so you're wondering, like, bro, why you can't do this, bro? Why you can't do that? But they're the basic things that I found out that they didn't know growing up, and so that's how they so easily to just run with somebody who could tell them anything,
Mm-hmm.
they'll believe it. So what we
Sure.
try to do, man, the average 19-year-old, we're probably teaching him things that I taught my 8 and 9-year-old sons. So you got to go back that far. Just the basic
Mm.
principles of life, man. So but it's working out pretty good. We the diversion program, we're in every metro county, mainly Fulton. We have kids out of Alabama. We also have young men in the program from Florida that I've never met.
Mhm.
We're making some impact, man.
Oh, 100%. I know that. I know that. And really proud of your work, brother. Because,
Thank you, man.
at the end of the day, and I was just saying this recently, at the end of the day, there's organizations like yours, there's organizations like the Black Man Lab, there's, a ton of organizations out there that are doing the work of the people, but just in different ways, right?
Right,
And the work that I think you're doing is super significant in that I'm sure you see the greatness in a lot of those young folks as they come through. As you get down to their bare bones, as you were
right,
saying,
right,
you wind up saying, "Man, this kid could be great,"
right, right.
and you believing in them like that makes them start to believe in themselves, and that can change the trajectory of their lives. But not only that, the trajectory of the communities that they're in, right?
Right, right.
And I'll be interested to be able to, and I'm sure you probably do it, is to look at those kids, 5 years down the line, and see what they're doing and how they're impacting the world.
Yeah, so you know that we know that two things that black boys gonna do. They're gonna have sex, they're gonna smoke weed, right? So while we got you, one of the things that we want to make sure that you are 5 years down the road is a great father. We know you're gonna have
Mm.
sex, we know you're gonna have unprotected sex, and we know the possibilities of you getting a baby is extremely high. But if I can get you to be a great father, you're going to
Mm.
empty this room out where I'm in. So man, we just fatherhood, man. We pound that on them, and most of them have
Yeah.
kids, man, and they come back with their kids. So, but it's a great thing, man.
Wow.
One of the things that we don't want is, man, we don't want to create another guy that you describe your daddy to be. We don't want you to be that guy. And so,
Right.
just creating good fathers, man, is been our key because we know they gonna have sex, Marty, and they gonna make babies.
Yeah. That's going to happen.
Yes, sir.
but but to your point though, that does happen, and it does happen in the most underserved communities. But there's also guys that happens with that may be with their baby's mom, they may not be, but they're decent dads,
Yeah.
and those kids that are a byproduct of that have a much better chance,
Right.
right?
Right.
Having a caring father, no matter what his income is, whatever, the caring father piece of it is what matters the most.
Yes, sir.
So if you're hammering that home with them, that's beautiful. Um, so let's talk about Monday, the conversation. Unfortunately, I missed most of it because I was doing the interview. Um, but the conversation was around conflict resolution. How was that going in the room? Tell me about that piece. What did you see here, and what were your thoughts?
In the room on Monday night.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think it's so interesting, man, that everyone has a lot of different perceptions. So when you're thinking about conflict resolution, that's almost like how you deal with it. It's almost like how what kind of religion you was raised off of, or what kind of life you live. So my conflict resolution may be different from bro to my left. I grew up as a pastor kid. So our thing
Mm.
was, hey man, you turn the other cheek and you get the hell on and live to see tomorrow. Where the guy to the right of me, like, nah, man, I'm standing on my 10, or I'm a lion. So I think a lot of that
Mhm.
conflict resolution, man, is based on where you live. You're not seeing certain people not seeing folks in their neighborhood are just talking through stuff, right? So you have got to teach conflict resolution. You have got to go. This is how we're going to get to the bottom of an Atlanta, man. We've got to attack every pre-K classroom in the city of Atlanta. And
Mm.
you let conflict resolution follow them all the way through elementary school, all the way through middle school. Because most
Mm.
young men that's in high school, man, that's just who they are, right? So it's something that you can probably deal with it if a young man is in jail. But for a young man to be out walking around with guns and you telling him, man, it ain't even worth it. Hey, man, this ain't how I grew up. I grew
Right.
up where I had to stand on my 10. I grew up where, we killed for ours. I didn't grow up like that. So when I talk about conflict resolution, man, I look at it like a religion. How are you raised? You from
Mm-hmm.
Chicago. I'm from Alabama. Y'all,
Mm-hmm.
you dodging bullets going to school, right? And you got to
Mm-hmm.
think, man, growing up, the only people I saw with a gun were old men that was riding in their trucks. I never saw
Yeah.
young people with guns, man.
Yeah.
When I was
Yeah.
hanging, I mean, that's just where I'm from.
Right. Right. Yeah. That's a great point because I think, to your point, your responses to things are a byproduct of how you were raised or where you were raised, even. I have my awareness is probably a lot different than some people's because of how I grew up, right? And where I grew up, particularly. Um, and likewise, my reactions to things might be just, not to, I hate to talk about it, but I was thinking about the Oscars, Chris Rock's reaction to what happened to how I might have reacted to it. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right,
And
right,
and and that comes from where I come from, right?
right,
Um, and my thoughts on that. So I think you hit a great point there when you talked about pre-K starting there, because then you start a sense of programming in somebody's mind in terms of starting to think about actions and reactions, because that's really what conflict resolution is about, right? It's
right.
like how to, because if you start thinking something through before you just react, then you're gonna probably have a better result, right?
Yeah, so when you look at
Um,
pre-K and kindergarten, that's like the wet cement, right? You can get in there and shape it however you
safe,
want
yeah.
to. And so you got to think about the way that I was raised. It was more one of those things where I take my sons, for example, who are in college. So I'm saying to my sons, like, hey, man, the best way to deal with a lot of things, if you're at a party and things like it's about to go left, you got to bounce. Or somebody push up on you, hey, man, it ain't even worth it. Well, the next young man that pushed up on him wasn't even taught like that. He was
Mm-hmm.
just taught in his neighborhood, I'm just drawing and I'm popping. So I think a lot of that, man, is on, because you got to think, man, when you think of conflict resolution, you're thinking about dealing with what you think is best and what protects you the best, right? So when you think of a group of young men, that young man that got low self-esteem, that lacks confidence, so he's going to by all means necessary do what he got to do to protect himself. And here's the thing:
Mm-hmm.
there's no certain way that I recommend conflict resolution, because that's almost saying to you, man, you shouldn't be no Muslim. You should be Baptist, or you shouldn't practice Buddhist. You should be Catholic. So
Mm-hmm.
when you're talking about conflict resolution, man, it is a case by case situation. It is based upon where you from, who you rock with, the neighborhood you from, where you go to
Yeah.
school, the club you go to. So it's a very tough subject, man.
Yeah, I think that the underlying thing that should lie for all of us as it relates to conflict resolution is, ultimately, because see, there's people where I grew up. There's some people that look forward to laying hands on somebody, right?
Right, right,
No matter what, you know what I mean. It would be the
right,
smallest of things, and they want to lay hands on somebody. But really, it should be. Let me try to make this as less as least possible of me having to lay hands on somebody. Some people's thresholds are a little bit higher than others, but I'm gonna try to walk away as much as possible. I'm gonna try to defuse as much as possible until I can't anymore.
right,
That
right,
that would be conflict resolution in my mind. Especially I think probably part of that is because now we're a little bit older, so we can see things
right,
differently.
right,
But if we are working hard to train our young folks in that manner, in that thought process, then I think then that the long term, for the future is going to look a lot better in terms of people not wanting to draw quick or throw a punch quick.
Yeah, so when I look at the what's going on in the city, man, Atlanta is a very prideful, flashy city. And it's one of those cities where everybody shows what they have. So it's not like you got a lot of money and you don't show it. So it's one of those, and you have so much easy access to people. Like you could just walk up to a celebrity, you know, in Phipps or Saks or Lennox. Whereas if you're in another city, there's a certain people that's invited to a certain area. So and so when you're looking at the conflict here, man, it's all about it's most of it boils down to I want to prove to the next man that he's not better than me or he doesn't have more than me. If you
Mm-hmm.
peel back the layers, Marty, a lot of this stuff, man, is material things, a lot of hurt, a lot of anger. That's what I talked about in the class on Monday, man. How can we get them to deal with this anger? Because I think we all
Mm.
get angry about something, but can we
Who?
catch it before it gets to rage? Hitting
Yeah.
holes in the walls, pulling your gun. So, and we got to get this into the school somehow, man. I don't know how we're going to do it, but we got to get it at an elementary level. When you're in high school, you pretty much created the personality you're going to be for
Yeah.
the next 5 to 10 years. Pre-K, Marty, pre-K, 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 kindergarten.
we, I'm with you. I'm with you. We need to talk about that, man. That might be some programming between Next Level and Black Man Lab that we have to come up with and
Okay.
present because I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, there's so many things that the school systems could have in place that could mitigate a lot of stuff that happens, but unfortunately, our education system doesn't work that way generally. So, um,
But pre-K has a little bit more wiggle room, and you got to
yeah.
think too that if you in there talking to a 4-year-old about the dangers of guns, because when they get to third grade, they're pretty much initiated in games. By fifth grade, they're big homies. So you got to
Mm,
catch them, man, in kindergarten, man, or pre-K. So your message is a little deeper.
mm,
Uh, yeah, that fifth grade is tough, man.
wow. Who would have ever thunk it? I'm thinking
It's
about me in fifth grade. I was in a creek catching snakes and fish and
No, man.
crawdads, man.
Fifth graders selling weed, man. Middle school kids strung out on crack. Man, I mean, it's. I get a
Wow,
chance to read all this stuff, man. The dynamics, man, is we're living in a very, very unusual times, brother.
brother. Indeed, indeed. Hey, man, do you if you need to jump, do you got to go or are you good
How much longer does it last?
till 7:30?
Okay, yeah. So they're chiming on now. So I guess I got it on my phone, so I'll know when. I
Okay,
think I'll give them to
okay,
about 17. I think we'll jump on. Okay.
okay. Cool. What let me ask you this because I usually ask this of the guests here. Were there any questions that were brought up on Monday that you thought were interesting or kind of dynamic or anything that came up from the audience?
Just I don't know, man. I don't do well with large crowds of adults. So because I think a lot of what they talk about is what works best for them, and because that's who's in the room. So, but when I listen to a lot of that, man, it's I just sit back and listen, man. I think everybody's entitled to their own opinion. It's just that what works for me may not work for everyone else. All right. So, but it was interesting to say the least.
From what I caught, I caught the tail end and it was interesting.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was one of those where I walked in and I was kind of like, well, first of all, I was overwhelmed because that's the largest crowd that we've had since the pandemic.
Wow. Hold on
Um,
1 second, Marty. Hold on. Hold on.
sure. Uh-huh. Brother Gary's doing double duty for us today.
All right. I'm good, man. I got that going. I got some of my mentors running that, so I should be good at 7:30.
Okay, appreciate it, brother, so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
Um,
So when you talk about it, man, it's, you know, I think when I look at the Black Man Lab, I think it's a very genuine, safe place, right? And so when I look at a place like that, me personally, I would welcome the public, but the privileged get a chance to talk. All right.
mhm.
So when you're in a setting like that, because you have people that's coming there that's looking for answers. And so when you're standing up talking, man, you got people that are in vulnerable spaces. You got people that's just, so when you up there talking about all these other things and you can't shut the hell up when they tell you to shut up and all these things, it is a privilege to speak at the Black Man Lab, man. That is a
Uh-huh.
privilege. And you guys are doing a tremendous job there. And I don't know how you're going to wing that, because when I was hearing about conflict, man, it was, I mean, when you got an innocent 9, 10-year-old on the front row, when I say run, I don't mean literally turn around a 40-yard dash. I mean, man,
Yeah.
just if it's not necessary, just get out of there. Okay.
Yeah.
Because some things, but you got the guy that next to me said, no, man, you got to handle this shit like a lion, man. You just got to go for it, man. Say, you know what I'm saying? Because you got vulnerable ears.
Sure. Yeah, and Molly and I try to be conscious of that, and there's that's one of the dynamics of that room. And you're right, it is a privilege to talk, but there's people that come on a regular that sometimes don't ever want to talk, and then when you let them talk, you're like, well, damn, well, kind of wish that they didn't, because it goes on and on and on and on, And that's the other thing, is that we're up against the clock. You have such a limited window, and we try to handle that by making sure that the young folks talk first, ask questions first, and I don't know if any of them asked questions on Monday because I
Yeah, so
wasn't
Maui
there.
has been to a couple of classes on Saturdays, man. We got to get you out there so you can see how the show go. But in there,
For
man,
sure.
when you open your mouth in that room and you don't make sense, those young men are going to check you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like dude was saying, some guy was saying something on Saturday, man. Those young men would have said something to him. They probably would have asked him to be quiet, or they would have asked him
Mm-hmm.
to leave. That's the population. That's a crowd that we work with. I've seen it plenty of
Sure.
times, but I think that the conflict resolution, man, I think it's such a much needed topic in the city, man. That's something y'all maybe want to double back on and
Oh, we will.
spend some time on that one, man.
Yeah, we will. What do you do in your venue with that? What do you do? I know that you have to deal with that particular topic of conflict resolution. How does that go in your space?
Yeah, so I'm a scenario type guy, right? So we do a lot of demonstrations, and our young men are forever getting into altercations or getting into disputes. So I just talk about it, man. I hit it head on, like coach, I almost got into it last night. Okay, where were you last night? I was at such and such place. Well, wherever you went, was it intentional? Why were you
Mm-hmm.
there? So we
Mm-hmm.
got to be intentional about what we do, how we do things, where we go, what we talk about. That's dealing with the conflict before you even get to the conflict. You can't deal with the conflict once it's there. You're already in there. You already in
Right.
it. So let's be purposeful. Let's be intentional. If you know every time you go to that certain club or every time you go to that certain basketball court, they're fighting or shooting, you can't go there. That's how we
Right.
deal with it. Sometimes you can't avoid it, right? But in those times where you get in a situation and you can't avoid it, man, you got to be able to have communication, which the schools don't teach anymore. Communicate,
Mm-hmm.
communicate, communicate, communicate. Communication runs the world, Marty, and our young men lack that.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, if you're that again, I'm thinking about where we grew up at. Part of in Chicago, particularly, you shouldn't be. There were certain areas that you just didn't go. Particularly if you were from where I'm from, like the area where I'm from. If they found out you were in another area and you were from that area, they automatically assumed you were gang affiliated with that area that I'm from, and so sometimes you had to have great communication to be
Right.
able to talk your way,
Right.
out. Particularly because we played basketball all the time, so you go to different courts,
Right.
right? And
Right.
they find out you're like, oh, these Negroes are from Jeffrey Manor, So as soon as they knew you where you were from, now all of a sudden the dynamic. It didn't matter how good you could hoop or anything. They're gonna change the dynamic and stuff. So you had to, have a good mouthpiece on you to be able to talk your way through.
Yeah.
And you're right. That has to be a piece of the equation. And I'm sure that that's something that you talk to your guys about.
Yeah. Just demonstration, man. We probably spend more time on conflict resolution than we do anything. All right, because that
Makes
is what
sense.
got
Yeah.
you, what's got you in a situation, and we just tackle that anger, man. Just
Yeah.
that anger management, just teaching them how to redirect a conversation.
Mhm.
There's certain people that you having conversation with that you shouldn't be having conversation with. So again, Marty, it goes back to the basic principles of life that we have to teach. Okay. I mean, if
Yeah.
you know the bully is going to be on that hallway every day,
Don't
don't
go
go
that.
on that hallway. It's just that simple,
Right.
right? I
Right.
mean, so
Right.
those type of
Right.
things we talk about, man.
That's something else, man. Um, yeah. So Monday we were up to, I think we were roughly at 150 people on
Wow,
Monday.
wow.
Yeah, and that's the largest we've had since the pandemic. Since being back from the pandemic. And it was interesting. Like I said, when I walked in the room, which was late, and I walked in the room, and the energy is it's always palpable in the Black Man Lab, but that energy was a little different to me. I felt like there had been some tense conversations in there. I don't know. I'm just guessing. Was that the case?
No, it wasn't tense, man. I think it was some people that again had an opportunity to talk in a space that they're not skilled enough to talk in. Because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you you speak in a forum. You talk when you have one-on-one conversation with you and the homies. You can't
Yeah.
talk in that type of setting. So what you heard was a lot of talking, right?
Right. Right. Right.
And then
Right.
you hear speaking. And the thing about it is, especially with adult men, once we start flexing our muscles against each other, then we
Yeah.
definitely get louder. And the young folks do the
Sure.
same thing, but it was different. I mean, it was
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it was
I
different.
think the topic itself lends itself to that kind of a we've been fairly, for lack of a better term, milk toast in terms of the topics, but
Right,
I think
right.
that one just kind of naturally, we're
What I
dealing
would
with, we're in it, we're dealing.
Yeah, so what I would do, man, because conflict resolution again is a critical subject in the city of Atlanta. Every time I have conversations with someone, whether it's a mayor or a police officer or a DA, everything is about conflict resolution. So if I was to have a setting like that, and the thing in my program, the young men drive the conversation. I would flip the org chart in there and bring the young people up top and let the adults face them and
Mm,
let's hear from them. Let them drive the conversation about conflict resolution, because what you saw on Monday, you had all these people setting up top, man, and I've never been on this type of throne, and I'm up here with all this power, and I know I ain't got
yeah,
no power, so I'm gonna do. It's so I would have flipped that. I would have got all
yeah,
the adults. Y'all go over there, and you bring these
yeah.
young folks up front, and let them talk to us. That's how you
That's the
deal with
next
all
one. That's the
that.
next one. That's the next conflict resolution will go that way. You're right. You're right. Because ultimately, we need to hear from them, which is always the case. We always want to hear from the young folks, and in certain topics,
Right.
especially when they're professionally driven about something as it relates to the work world, we usually get a whole lot of engagement from them when we talk about self development topics like that one. Um, it's usually a lot more of them listening and a lot more the older folks, for lack of a better term, pontificating. You
Right,
know,
right,
um, and
right.
that's not what we need. Ultimately, we want to. The goal of the Black Man Lab is to get our young folks as enriched as possible across the board both professionally and personally. So, to your point, the next one that we have on conflict resolution, you called it, you got it, brother. I'm gonna
Yeah,
do it.
I
I'm
would
gonna do
flip
it.
it, man. And what I would do is I would have them with the mics talking to us about how they're dealing with conflict in the school,
Yeah,
in the neighborhood, on the way to class. And so, and
yeah.
because here's the thing, the reason why I've been successful with this, Marty, is because I've learned a lot from the young men. I don't go
Mhm.
in there as the instructor. I go in there as the guy who's learning something. And so that's how I'm able to navigate and get through my classes. Like Maui came in the last Saturday and said, man, I just want to come in here and listen. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Because that's what we have to do when it comes to conflict resolution because it's their issue. All right.
Yep.
And so once you do that, you will learn. You'll go back to it's that religion thing. You have somebody, man,
Mhm.
where I'm from, this is what we got to do. You know, my dad told me to do this. And then you may go and say, man, I've never had no conflict. It's like a
Right.
religion, man, but you got to let them talk to, and y'all got to keep that, those brothers that want to do that intense fellowship, man, y'all got to keep them under control.
I know it's an ongoing challenge, brother. Trust me. Trust me. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I mean, the lab, as you said, provides that safe space. You know, hey, when I'm wearing the shirt, um, but
And it's a
it
large
provides that.
panel. And it's a lot. You got to think, man, you all's panel is probably some of the largest panels that you'll ever see. Most panels are at least 3, 4 at max, maybe
Yeah.
5. So you got a
Yeah.
panel of 20 people, and you mean to tell me number 19 gonna let number 3 out talk him? So you know the next thing you know, man, they're in there looking at each other and forget that there's an
Yeah.
audience out there, man. I'm looking like, oh, I don't want to talk. I don't want to talk.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We've been keeping it down to 3 to 4 people, and when we
Okay.
do that, it's great. Now, again, when I walked in on Monday, I didn't know who was a panelist and who was in it because it was just that many people in the
Man, it was
room.
about
But
15.
wow, yeah, yeah, yeah. That's my brother, man. He gets fired up. Yeah, you gotta, he'll be like, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
let them
yeah,
talk.
yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah. And
you
you
might
know what,
have. Let's
man?
keep it for the next one.
And another thing too, Marty, is that a lot of people that come into you all space, they don't have a space of their own.
Right.
So, you know, I got a church where I can preach, right? So when I go to somebody's church, man, I just want to hear the word. Like you don't even have to
Yeah.
give me the mic. Well, you got somebody that come in there, got shit going on, man. So they want the microphone, they want to preach. First of all, I even
Yeah.
invite you here. So it was tough, man. That won't happen on Saturdays with me. Before I
Yeah.
tell them to be quiet, the young men will.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah. Well, clearly, this past Monday it got a little different than what we because the past few Mondays we've been,
Yeah.
you know, that's been an ongoing conversation. Let's just say that,
Right.
and
Right.
we've
Right.
been real purposeful in
But the work that
trying
you
to
all are
have.
doing is amazing, man. I think it's much needed. I think that the various topics that you all are hitting on, man, and y'all already know, man, I got a lot going on. I think everybody does, but anytime y'all call me, man, I'm there, brother.
Yeah, and we appreciate it, man. We have to do the same, brother. So like I told you, I'm committed. It might be this Saturday. I'll let you know if I can get there this Saturday. My dad's been in not great health,
No,
so
just
that's
take care of dad,
yeah,
man. This Saturday won't be
yeah,
a good one anyway because I
yeah.
will just be virtual this Saturday. So if you
Okay,
come the
okay,
following Saturday, I think Mao will be back at that time too.
okay. Yeah, for sure. Um, but look, man, I'm not going to keep you. I'm going to let you get out of here because you were kind enough to stay on longer. I appreciate that, man. And we're going to keep doing this work together, brother. And me and you need to sit down and talk about that pre-K curriculum, man. I think that's something that needs to happen, man.
If you want to get something into the education system, the easiest way. to get it in is with by way of pre-K, and that's the most needed.
Mm,
When you get to third grade, man, it gets tough. Fifth grade, they figured it out.
yeah. So
Pre-K, kindergarten, but that's easy, man. I think what we do, we sit down and talk. We hit up a daycare center that got some 4-year-olds in there and say, hey, can we just come in there and talk about some things? And there you have it. Because
mhm, yeah.
all 4-year-old classes are not funded by the state. But I think we can pull it
Okay.
off, man. Let's just talk about it.
For sure. For sure. All right, brother. I'm gonna let you go. Thank you so much. And again, love you, appreciate you, and I'll talk to you soon.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Marty.
Okay, bro.
Yep.
So that was Gary Davis, our partner, and has been great with working with the Black Man Lab and his program, which is Next Level Boys Academy. They do some amazing work, and it's intense work because they're trying to keep young black men out of the system, and they're doing a great job of it. A lot of those young men come through the Black Man Lab and are integral parts of what we do. So we are excited to be partners with him and look forward to doing even more. What I didn't do at the beginning of this was talk about what the Black Man Lab is and how it came about. Black Man Lab started roughly 5 years now. That the Black Man Lab started, which was just four fathers that got together to give their sons a different voice. So often our sons tune us out as fathers. We could tell them, the sky is blue, and they're gonna say, not today. It's not. But yet, an uncle, a good friend, a godfather says, hey, the sky is blue. They're gonna say, it is, Unc, isn't it? Because they'll listen to somebody other than us as their father. So that's how it came about, and that started with just four fathers and them having their sons. Well, those sons thought it was so um, effective that they wound up starting to bring their friends, and it grew. And what happened was we started bringing in specialists from different fields. So if you're interested in being a doctor, we brought in a black man doctor. You're interested in being a performer, or a rapper, or whatever, we brought somebody in that was that, um, to give these guys a different look. It grew from about those original four to again 30 people, and then eventually before the pandemic we were up to 250 black men every week. And we provide a different topic and a panel of experts each week. As Gary alluded to, sometimes that panel can be large, but we try to keep it down to 3 or 4 people now. But they're experts on whatever the topic is. This past week we talked about conflict resolution. So we had some people, probably a few too many, that were experts or had experience in that space. So they were able to share. Um, we target young black men from 13 to 25, but realistically, the Black Man Lab is a safe and sacred place for black men, period. We have an intergenerational learning experience where we have young folks from 5 years old to those of a little more senior to 85 years old in that space, and we share. We learn from the young learn from the old, and all the way in between. The idea is to give our young folks information that they wouldn't normally see and or hear. They're able to see black men that have a high level of success in doing whatever they're doing, um, and learn from them. Quite often in our communities, those of us that have had some success in whatever our field of expertise is, we just stay in our own little square, and we keep do our work of what we're doing, and we live our lives for our family and maybe those immediately around us, but not so much the community, just for a variety of reasons that happens. But what we're saying is we're going to download whatever information we have for our young black men as well as women. We're going to give that information so that you can have a jump start on whatever that is that you want to do in life, whether that's something professionally or something personally. We're going to help to give you a jump start. Next week at the Black Man Lab, we are talking about the world of startups and being an entrepreneur. So we're gonna have a great panel of experts next week to talk to our young folks. Our young folks love this topic. They love to talk about being an entrepreneur. They love to talk about doing their own startups and how to get there. That's what we want to provide them as kind of a pathway. Likewise, within the Black Man Lab, we wind up giving a whole lot of mentorship. We wind up having brothers that come in there that say, hey, here's a young man who wants to be an engineer. I'm an engineer. I'm going to take him under my wing and show him the way. That's what it's all about. It's all about sharing. It's all about us changing the paradigm of what the future looks like. Ideally, what we want to see happen is that the need for what Black Man Lab is, 20, 30 years down the road, isn't there. As much as I love this organization, I love what we're doing, and being the executive director of this organization, as much as I love it, what I ultimately want to see is that there's no need for it. Because our young folks have taken the lead, they've become leaders in their communities, our communities are changing, and by proxy, the rest of the world is changing. We know that there's greatness in our young folks. We know that given the opportunity, they will lead with purpose and lead from a place of love. And that's what we do as an African community. That's what we do. With that, I'm going to let it go and say thank you for watching Lab Results this evening. I hope you got something out of it, and look forward to next week for Lab Results, as well as looking forward to next week's Black Man Lab on Monday at the Andrew and Walter Young YMCA. And lastly, Black Man Lab is expanding. We're looking to have some different locations here in the Atlanta area, as well as Georgia in general. We're looking at Statesboro, Georgia. We did a couple weeks ago, we did a Black Man Lab down there that was very well received, and the folks down there want to continue to do it. So we're committed to it. Likewise, we're looking at different metropolitan cities as well to do the Black Man Lab before the year is out. Not because we want Black Man Lab expanding so much, but because we want what Black Man Lab is about to expand. And that means touching the lives of our young black men so that they can be integral in their communities. That's us, and that's what we want to do. Look forward to seeing you next week. Love you. Take care.